Welcome to the Mark Hope Show. And we continue to work on our lighting issues because I did what I thought was a pretty good show on multi-level marketing. And the lighting was crappy. I think the message is fine. And I honestly have a face for radio and podcasting. So there's that. However, I'm going to continue to try and improve it. This camera is tracking my face, and I don't know exactly why it keeps wanting to push me down, but we'll figure out some of that as we go along. In the vein of trying to kind of expose what I'm learning, and this show is about advocacy, um, bullying the bully. This show is about sharing my experience in life. Um, Essentially, I'm somebody's grandpa, and I've done some things in my life. And if anything that I have to say helps someone else who really had, a great guy for a dad, but, he had his own issues and, he taught me some stuff. But if I really could have learned some other things earlier in life, it would have really helped me. That's the type of icing that I'm putting on the cake. Maybe it's your friend group and you're not running around with a friend group that is really interested in making gains, um, and doing the bedrock work of building up that financial, you know, world. There's a lot of people that are raised in families and they already know what LLC is and why we want to have a CPA and what we want to do with taxes and retained earnings, and how we want to have a small business going alongside of our W-2 job and what that looks like. And I am here to answer questions and just pick subjects that I like to talk about, because I feel like if you want to fight the monsters that follow you at night, turn around, and we will expose light on those together. And a lot of times people feel like they're stuck in their W-2 jobs, and somebody needs to come along and help them. And they offer them something that's too good to be true. Um, my show last night was about multi-level marketing. And that is a show that needs to be exposed. Why is this happening? I don't know why this is doing this, but why is it showing this headroom up here? I don't get it. But I am going to try to turn off the auto frame and just manually adjust this camera. So, because I have ADD, and if it's going to distract me, then we're not going to have a good show talking about content. So, um, at any rate, we are, okay. So I think we're on track again here. And I want to see my screen. Okay. So we're going to try this. I'm working on it. But the point of all this is that I want to share knowledge, especially when somebody is lying and they're trying to take people that are hopeful and have energy and will try hard to improve their situation. And these vultures come along and try to act like they're really gracious and they're a teacher. And somebody that is charging you for teaching you something is somebody that you need to be aware of. And a teacher that is teaching from their heart that only wants your success is the most valuable thing that we can get. And there's a lot of situations in life where that isn't true. And then the second best is somebody who is fair and knowledgeable and has morals and integrity. And then that goes all the way to the other side of the spectrum, and the cheaters and the ne'er-do-wells and the filthy people in life that take people. I did a short on YouTube and I talked about $30 billion of overdraft fees that were charged by the branch banking system. And they've taken $30,000 away from people that didn't have enough money. And they got money. And you know, it's not right. And these multi-level marketing people, I did the show last time about that, and that's not this show, but we'll go back to that topic as many times as we need to, hopefully with guests and audience members. And if you're intimately familiar, either defending that subject matter or collaborating what I think is the truth, I'd like to have you on the show. So reach out and email us at the show, or respond in the chat of what's going on. But today's issue is going to be IUL and infinite banking. And in the spirit of showing you guys my learning, I am going to tell you what I'm doing, as I'm self-producing this show. It's the first time ever that I've produced my own show. And in this particular case, I have a markup show directory, then I make a subdirectory, and then I make a IUL and infinite banking. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to save it as IUL and infinite banking prompts. And so now I can go here and I can say, you are an expert financial advisor, and you are only giving out advice that is clear, honorable, and successful outcomes over large ranges of groups of data. And we are going to be truthful about certain investments and the high risk and the very low favorable outcome, or the fantastic success that people might be having with whatever these investments are. So I go ahead and save that. And now I'm going to copy and paste that. and set this aside because we're gonna save as that document a lot through the process. And after the show, I put the chat notes in that subdirectory on a doc file, and I'm recording on Zoom right now because it has an AI transcription piece to it that I'm testing out. I have several other transcription AI products that I'm testing out, but if you can get use of uh, one product doing several different things in AI, that is valuable. And I'm going to do a segment on this show about what is your favorite AI product that you pay money for. And that means that it's good. That means that I'm using this and then I run out of credits, or it times me out and says, oh, you can't finish this until whenever. And you're saying, hey, look, I'm getting on a good groove. I want to pay for more usage of this product. And then we'll discuss them on the show, which ones we like, which ones we don't like. I have a live podcast studio software that I use that does a similar thing to this, but the video quality and the screen share is absolutely not as good, and it's far more expensive to doing the show this way. So I got my prompt together, and now I'm going to pick a GPT model, Chat GPT, or an AI model. And I'm really liking this 5.2 Chat GPT, and the results I get, especially during the show. And so um, I started off and I made a project, the Mark Hope Show, and then I added, this infinite banking show. So it builds up different directories of shows that I'm doing on different dates and whatever it is. So this is the infinite banking show that we're doing here. And that kind of keeps everything in alignment. So when I make that category here, IUL and infinite banking, and this is about whole life insurance and blah blah blah, and we'll get into it. The the AI kicks right in it and it's saying, "Hey, let's talk about what this is." And it does that automatically. I haven't told them who they are and what we're wanting to do. So I am going to go down to the bottom, and there's already some stuff in here. Um, but I'm going to put in, and I love the fact that it makes suggestions as you start your thought process off in the AI. Then there's a string that comes down and it says, hey, we can do this next, which I think is a really cool way to develop your own thoughts. And it's like being in the room with somebody who's super smart, and that's very cool. And I have it in my car, and I hit the grok button in my car on the screen and say, Eve, tell me about something. And then we have a conversation in the car, and my wife and I are driving, and it's like we really have somebody smart in the car. And is it perfect? It's not perfect. Okay. I asked it the other day, hey, what's spot silver at? And she came back and said, blah, 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 spot silver, $24. And I said, Eve, I don't know what you're smoking, but check again. And that's exactly what I told her. And she came back and said, oh, just hit the wrong data pocket, not smoking anything. Silver is $88, whatever. And so you need to trust but verify. But there's a lot of data sets, and things can be checked. And my purpose on this show is to present you with information. I can tell you what I think. She can tell you what the world thinks, and you can make your own decision. And just like the last episode that we did, and I've gotten a lot of feedback on that, the multi-level marketing cult and how they try to get you away from your regular friends because they're not, about your dreams or whatever. And there was some real information about money that people lost. So, and lives destroyed by the cultish type thing. So we're going to look at this. And when somebody tells you, hey, be your own banker, because, we don't want to be Dave Ramsey. I saw an influencer the other day that said, oh, I wasn't, the Dave Ramsey rice and beans thing. I didn't have enough time for that. So I did this. And we're going to dive into that infinite banking thing, and there's a bunch of double talk they do. Well, Big Papa doesn't deal in double talk. We're going to get in there and we're going to ask some questions, and we're going to find out what they are really doing, and then you could decide, oh, I'm going to do this infinite banking. I'm going to buy a whole life policy. I'm going to do all this stuff. At least you're going to go into it with your eyes open and be able to model 20-year-old data and say, if I would have done this 20 years ago, would I have been better off or not? So, without further ado, I'm going to put in a prompt that tells the AI who they are and what we want. You can treat this as a statement of financial ethics and methodology and any investment. And I'm going to do on a show on crypto as well. And then I'll go back down to more and more traditional type stuff. But what I'm looking for is the bad actors. I'm looking for people who just are cheating people. And in real estate, there's a lot of that goes on, and we'll talk about how you're getting cheated and what the problem is. And there's some bad ones out there, and I will definitely reveal those in a future show. But let's talk about the subject at hand, because I have a tendency to ramble on. I had a kidney replacement a year ago. My anniversary was the 3rd, and I take a lot of medicine. And so if I forget some things, you have to forgive an old man. But I'm not charging you much for this information. So we've told the AI who they are: truthful, honor-based, data-driven, outcome-focused. So we're going to say a question. What is infinite banking? And there was a guy that came up with all this and wrote a book. This is not an investment strategy. It's not a wealth creation engine. It's not a retirement replacement. At best, it is slow, conservative financing tool. The idea came from Nelson Nash. That's the guy that wrote the book. Promoted using dividend paying whole life insurance as a place to store capital so that it could be borrowed and repeatedly used over a long period of time. Overfunded policies, conservative expectations. Essentially, what these things do is you put all of your eggs in this life insurance basket, and then you borrow against it, against the account to pay for your bills. And the idea is that you're putting all of your income in this policy and you're paying all of your bills out of the account, that you're borrowing at 9% or 12% interest, but you're buying down the principal supposedly because you're putting more principal payments in every month. And again, I'm going to give you concepts, and a lot of times it's going to be all I know. But I don't need to know exactly how a cobra's venom works to know I want to stay away from a cobra that's going to bite me. But we'll deal with as much um, as we can. Um, this is used by people who already had cash flow. The way this is sold to people is they're heavily in debt and they don't already have cash flow. But you buy a whole life insurance policy, they call it permanent life insurance. High early premiums, cash value builds slowly. And by high premiums, they mean high premiums. There's two kinds of insurance. One of them is term life, and the only people that should have that are somebody that has somebody else depending on their income. So let's say back when I had little kids that I had to take care of, or you have you're going to work every day and your wife's a stay-at-home mom, or vice versa. And if you went away, the family would be in peril, So you bought life insurance, said you're a fireman or a policeman, and you got killed in the line of duty, you would have an insurance policy that would take care of your family because there was nobody else doing that. That's it. That's what life insurance is about. And as soon as nobody is depending on your income, you need to get rid of it. You don't need it anymore because it's not an investment vehicle. It's not good for that. And whatever you're paying needs to be diverted to income building assets that are designed to do that. And betting on your own death so that your family can get some money, that's it's a crazy thing. And you can explore this stuff in the AI and have your own questions. I will also share the root GPT from the show with anybody that wants to just go off of my thing and then build on it and ask their own questions or whatever. But overfunding the policy, pay more than the minimum. I mean, a whole life policy is like 10 times higher than a term policy. And there's a death benefit, but there's a lot of screwy stuff that happens. And we'll ask her what's going on and we'll talk about it. But you're borrowing against the policy. You're not taking money out of the policy. So you're paying off 3% debt with a 9% or 12% loan account, and then you're borrowing money from yourself at a premium. And I think that it gets the life insurance company gets the money. And it's it's crazy. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy. And I'll ask her a couple of questions as we go along, and I'll pause for a couple of these things. Um, Early years are cash negative because, like, the first year pays the guys or gals that are selling this snake oil, it pays their big, huge commissions that they make. So all the money you're paying into this policy is going into the pockets to the guy that told you, hey, this is great. Well, it's great because he's buying a new fishing boat. Loans are not free. You pay interest. Returns underperform. Loans compound interest. Um, Mismanagement can collapse the policy, which means that you're putting all your eggs in this basket of people that are employing these snake oil salesmen, and you're expecting the thing not to go under. Silverado failed, Enron failed. I mean, just because you're a big company doesn't mean you can't go bankrupt and fail. And if all of your money is in one of these life insurance policies and these companies go out of business, guess what? Sorry, we're out of business. Nothing we could do. You know, you picked wrong. whoa. Um, and you can go back and read this in the show notes. And I'm trying to put some of this stuff together on Stackable, and some of the notes will be more correlative to the Stack account. Um, Here's something that it says that they're good for: supplementing an already strong financial base. These people are not talking to people that have a strong financial base. These people are selling this stuff to people that are hand to mouth, and they have a certain amount of money for their retirement, and they want to make sure that it's not affected by the market. And the way these guys do that is they say, oh, if the market downturns, you don't experience any losses. No, that's true, because they only give you 4% in the up times. And the S&P 500 is like 10% over time. So they keep 5% for 8 years. And then in the 2 years, they just don't pay you the 4%. And they use your money all the other times to pad those. So they're getting all the benefit of your money. You're getting a quarter of the benefit or a third of the benefit from your money. So if you had bought term life insurance for a tenth less, and Ramsey explains this very well. You need to go listen to him about this. But if you would have taken the term life insurance, if you needed it, and then taken the other 90% of those premiums and invested it into a good Roth IRA, if you earn low enough money, or a good IRA if you make too much money, the market is going to grow those dollars, and it's going to equal out the inflation. So it is not good for young wealth builders. It's not good for replacing investments. It's not good for catch-up strategies, retirement accounts, replacing retirement accounts, people with inconsistent income. And they're selling this to people that are retiring and they want a stable income in retirement. Well, that's an inconsistent income. That's no income. That you're getting nothing, and it's not good for inconsistent income. So this is another segment of, and she is saying it doesn't make it evil, it makes it misproportioned. I think it's evil, and I'm going to stand on that. I think it's evil, and I think if you're like, north of 100 million, you may find something that works with these insurance policies. And I believe that, well, let's ask her. We've often heard that the only person that could really benefit from this are the super rich in their estate planning strategies. Can you let us know if that's true? And if so, why would it benefit the super rich that are planning their estates and not mom and pop that have $300,000 in retirement that want to protect against the ups and downs of the stock market? That's a big rutabaga. That's probably going to take her a little bit. Okay, see? Infinite style life insurance strategies primarily benefit the very wealthy. They already won the wealth game. And this is what I'm saying. The people that these insurance people are targeting are people that are afraid. They're afraid that they're going to have to live on their $1,200 a month Social Security check. And if they give up their $300,000 IRA and put it in an overfunded IUL or whole life policy, that they're going to have an annuity. They're going to have, you know, $3,000 a month for the rest of their life. And it's simply word salad. It is absolutely just made up sales job. And their problem is taxes, timing, and transfer. Insurance solves that because, instead of, taking a big tax hit, you filter it through time payments and you don't get taxed so much. There's a trust called a guaranteed income trust. So let's say you made $1 million on a property sale and you can pay $300,000 in taxes, or you can 1031 exchange that into another property, or you can 1031 exchange it into an income producing trust. And what that means is they will calculate over 20 years what you'll be paid from the trust, and then you can put that down at the bank when you want to get a loan and say, I'm getting $3,600 a month for the next 20 years from this guaranteed income trust. And so you're only getting taxed on $45,000 worth of income in over year by year by year. And so it's smaller and your tax bracket is smaller instead of taking a huge hit when you're, making $1 million in 1 year, you take it in little chunks. And that's a strategy as well. And it's saying the mom and pop for $300,000 is not a good idea. Why it works for the super rich, estate planning arbitrage, liquidity without selling assets, and this is a thing that all the rich people do. And it's hard for us to understand because we don't have the means to do the rich people stuff. We don't have the money. And, when you're talking about somebody who is super rich, like Elon Musk, he's a pretty rich guy. And he doesn't take a paycheck from Tesla, he takes stock. And they pay him in stocks, and his stocks grow. And then when he wants to spend some money, he goes to the bank and says, give me $40 million loan against my zillion dollar worth on my Tesla stock and take it as collateral. And so what happens at that point is that, yes, they pay interest on the loan. However, 7% or 4% interest on the loan is a lot less than 38% interest on taking it as earned income. Even if it's capital gains income, it's 15%. So they're doing things that we can't do and using a tool that they use to try and fix something that we're doing because somebody who's talking to us is getting a giant commission. I don't get anything for telling you this. Zero. I get nothing. And if you choose to listen to what I'm saying, double check me. I'm saying double check me. But if one person hears the sound of my voice and double checks them and doesn't get hurt because of it, then that's all the opinion I need. That's what I'm looking for. That's my motive for doing all this. And so this is why the rich do it, blah, 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 blah. Why it usually doesn't help mom and pop. Let's talk about the $300,000. What the mom and pop actually need is growth, inflation protection, like I talked about before, income replacement, flexibility, simplicity, low cost, time to compound. And insurance does none of these things well. And, if you had $300,000 5 years ago, and you look at the difference in what your buying power is because what happened over COVID, they printed all this money, and before a Big Mac was $1.75, $1.25, now it's $4. So if you had $100,000 5 years ago and it was staying as $100, it was just sitting there, you could buy 3 times less Big Macs with your $100,000. If you had it in the market and let it grow, then you could probably buy a $4 Big Mac because you would have $300,000 instead of $100,000. But not if you put your money in one of these jokers. They can't afford low returns. Volatility is never the real enemy. You have to, look at the long range before you panic. Oh, the market dropped. Well, it always does that. What? Show us a graphic that shows the stock market from 1920 or whenever it was started, and show a graphic that shows the stock market in a continual upward growth along those times, no matter what happens. And I don't know if I said that well or not, but the point is, even when it was a Great Depression, the market goes down, then it goes up. And so let's name everything that should have killed the stock market. And it didn't. 9/11, dot-com, financial crisis of '08, you know, and you guys can email the show or look in the show notes or whatever. Yeah, let's do this. What I want is I want to have charts that just show us that continual growth. And maybe I picked um too wide of a range of dates. Stock market crash. That's the stock market crash it's talking about. And this is the graphic that I really wanted to share with you guys is we look at 1937 and we're going down, we're going up, we're going down, we're going up and up and up. And, we've got 86 with MCI WorldCom and all those guys. And then shoots up to year 2000, and then it goes down, and then '07, and this was the mortgage crisis thing, and it dropped way down, but then it goes back up. And we're looking at 7 years here to get our money back. So 2007 to 2014, and then we're going up again. So, should you have all your eggs in the stock market basket, especially if you're like me, I got like 10 years left to live. So, yeah, if I have all my money in the stock market, which I don't, and if you watch some of my other videos, we'll talk about other places that we can put that money, then I would have a 7 year period of time that is not so great, but this is where we're at right now. And, the stock market goes down and it goes back up again. And fear and greed index. So That's true. People are buying and selling and trying to convince people to do stuff all the time. So, um, let's do 20 years ago, Bert and Ethel decided to put their whole nest egg in a whole life IUL policy using all of the tools of Nelson Nash. And then Barney and Thelma decided to put their money in a S&P 500 index. And I want you to compare and contrast what happened to these two couples. So let's see what happens there. I'm betting on Barney. So it's saying that the 20-year reality, starting with 300,000, um, and this relies on whether you're taking money out of it. You know, it's assuming that you're not taking anything out of it, but 550 to 700,000, high complexity, um, low to moderate returns. I think the risk is not good. Feels safe, but they are not wealthy. Now let's check in on Barney and Velma. And I haven't looked at these results. You guys watch me type them in. So I'm going to be as much in the dark as you guys are. But I think they did a little bit better than 700,000 bucks. 20-year portfolio value, 1.1 million and 1.4 million based on long-term historical averages. And this is not Gordon Gekko. It's Barney and Velma or Thelma or whatever I said. They're not doing anything fancier than buying the S&P 500 stocks. And there's the fund that I like. There's several of them, but the one that I do business with is the Vanguard VOO. And that is the top 500 stocks. And let's say that a stock is 450 and then drops down to 503. Well, that gets knocked out of it, and then they buy the other one. That was 501, and they keep it the top 500 stocks. And you don't have to do anything. You just have to go buy the stock, and that's it. And that's it. You can just pull up your Schwab account, take a look at it, and go from there. Brutal truth. Bert and Ethel were optimized for comfort, and Barney and Velma were optimized for outcome, and the insurance salesman doesn't get his big fat check. And the irony, Bert and Ethel still worry about money. Barney and Velma won't worry about taxes and legacy. That's the crossover point. Let's can you show us the last performance of the Vanguard's VOO fund to let us know how good that is on investing in the S&P 500? Most successful, most accessible index funds. And let's just click on Max. So it's like I said, you buy this and that's it. It goes up and down, but you're betting against the best. You're betting on America. And, if you listen to people like Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, Warren's partner, he says this, I think, and it's just bet on America, and he's obviously done different things, but it's very hard to beat the S&P 500. And if you don't have a lot of knowledge, more importantly, you don't want a lot of knowledge and you don't want to screw around buying and selling and making a mistake or whatever. I mean, that's how my wife is. She doesn't care. She doesn't want to gamble. I mean, I gamble, but she doesn't want to gamble. And she doesn't want me gambling with the family, you know, comfort, security, the family money that keeps us safe. Um, so um, that's what we invest in. But if you can see some of these returns, you know, 17%, 24%, 26%, 1 year down 18.7%, and then 2021, 28.79%. And if you were in a life insurance policy that was giving you 4 to 5% guaranteed reserve with no loss, just add these up and divide by 5, see what you come up with. So I think that that provides enough information for why we want to take a second look at permanent life insurance, whole life insurance, be your own banker, um, the whatever they call it. If they have to keep making up names for it, so that somebody will buy it, what are they doing? And to be cautious, question everything, and ask a bunch of people. I listened to this guy on YouTube, and he was, somebody's grandpa, but not your grandpa, on the Mark Hope show, and he said this and that, and he looked it up on the internet, on the artificial intelligence, and it seemed like it was a good deal. Well, check with somebody else, but don't just check with me. Check with people that you trust. Do your research. But I will post this up, and as always, I will put the show notes in the Substack, and I will try to do a better job of figuring out how I can get the notes into the YouTube channel. It's like I said, I never used to do this. I had a producer that did all this, but I'm doing it myself just to show people that if you become old and broken like me, you could still learn to do some stuff. So, if nobody has told you that they love you today, I love you. And there isn't a darn thing you can do about that. So write me any questions you have and I'll answer them personally.